I would like to extend a warm welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Maggie Metcalf, and I am a social worker with the Safe Schools and Wellbeing portfolio at the Thames Valley District School Board. And my colleague Caitlin will introduce herself.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are very excited to be concluding this mini-series for Mental Health Week here in Thames Valley. As Maggie mentioned, my name is Caitlin Chow. I have the great fortune of working with the Safe Schools and Wellbeing portfolio as an implementation coach, which means I'm an educator who helps support other schools within our Thames Valley District School Board.
Thanks, Caitlin. We are fortunate to be part of the collaboration between two of the local school boards, Thames Valley District School Board and the London Catholic District School Board, and also partnering with community agencies to host these family wellbeing workshop presentations online throughout the year with varying topics and presenters. If you click on the link in this slide or scan the QR code, it will take you to our website where you can find the list of upcoming presentations, and we will provide more information about key contacts at the conclusion of today's presentation. So tonight we are thrilled to welcome Margaret Glab and Brianne Ciancio from Humana Community Services, and they will be speaking to understanding mental health and mental illness and their impacts on families. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will turn things over to you both.
Thank you for the introduction. So, Brianne and I work for Humana, and we work with youth and their families out in the community, provide mental health supports however they need it, and wherever we can fill the gaps in the community. So both of us have been doing this for a bit of time. And we always love sharing the knowledge that we have with people out in the community. So today we are going to share kind of the differences between mental health and mental illness, and then how you can support your family within to help with any issues or any difficulties within the family. So first I want to talk a little bit about mental health, right? So mental health is something that everyone has, right? It's like physical health. So everyone has it, and it fluctuates. So your mental health can be good one day and bad the next day. It just depends on what's going on in your life. And we all are in charge of taking care of our mental health, like our physical health, right? So it is a state of well-being, and you realize your own abilities and how you can cope with normal stresses in life, how you can work productively and make contributions in your community, right? So it's just an overall feeling of well-being. Mental illness is different. So mental illness is a condition, right, that affects the way somebody is thinking or feeling, behaving, or their moods, right? So it impacts the way a person functions on a daily basis, right? It's a disease. So everyone has mental health, but not everyone has mental illness, right? It's a disease just like diabetes or cancer, or it is something that will disrupt your life and the way you think and feel and behave, right? So just like other organs in the body, the brain is vulnerable to disease, right? And disorders. So mental illness has physical and psychological symptoms, right? A lot of, I think, thoughts or feelings about mental illness is that if you have it, there's no treatment. and you just have it and you have to live with it or not. But that's a misconception, right? That you can live a productive life with the right care and treatment when it comes to mental illness, right? So it's manageable, just like any physical ailments or physical diseases. You are able to get better and return to normal activities. There are so many different types of psychiatric illnesses, and the main form of diagnosing a mental illness is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's on a 5th edition right now. And this is what mental health practitioners use for diagnosing mental disorders. Fix. So mental illnesses include major depressive disorders, schizophrenia, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorders, panic disorders, post-traumatic stress, addictions, borderline personality disorders. So those are just to name a few. Like I say, there's like 200 different types. And it's different for everyone. Everyone experiences a diagnosed mental illness in a different way, right? So there's a wide spectrum that people could fall on depending on the severity of the mental illness that they're experiencing. At one end, someone could be well-adjusted, successful individual whose disorders are invisible to others. So what comes to mind for me with that statement is, on the news, right? They'll present a case on the news saying, this individual was loved by everyone. They were happy, they were functioning, they're the life of the party, but yet they're talking about suicide, right? That this person committed suicide, and people are shocked and taken back because that's not what they presented to the world around them, right? So that's like that's part of on one spectrum, and on the other spectrum, I think of like the severity of mental illnesses where they cannot function in life, and it's very evident that they're struggling with a mental illness. And what comes to mind for me is you're driving down the street and there's somebody walking down the sidewalk and they're cursing and they're yelling and they're like, automatically what you think of is either addiction or mental health issues. Like it's evident that that person is struggling with something, right? So there's a huge spectrum. Just because somebody is suffering with a mental illness, it doesn't mean that everybody knows that they have a mental illness.
Sorry, we went too far there.
So causes of mental illness. There's always ongoing research, right? It's new trends every year. New research is coming out about the brain, right? So the functions of the brain are still not completely understood, and either are the underlying causes of mental illness. What they know so far is it's a biopsychosocial. That is, so it's partly biological. So like your physical body, right? Partly psychosocial, and or social, and then partly psychological. So psychological is your emotions and experiences, and then the social is just what's going on around you, right? So biological issues such as the genes, physical illness, injury, or brain chemistry is a cause of mental illness. Social issues such as poverty, unemployment, job stress or loss through death or divorce are causes of mental illness. So research points at mental health problems are a reaction to excessive stress, genetic factors, and biochemical imbalances, or all three. It could be one or two or all three. They're not caused by character flaws, laziness, or a person's weakness, right? And some people need professional help, such as treatment and therapy or medication to get better, right? I think the hard part with mental illness is depending on the severity of the mental illness, and if that person is able to access a treatment and follow through with medication needs, and whatever professional help that is offered to them.
One of the important things I do want to highlight is there's a point there about developmental experiences specific to adverse childhood experiences, trauma, or abuse. So what that means, there was a study done in San Francisco about adverse childhood experiences where people explored life experiences and trajectories based off of someone's early childhood. So if someone had experienced trauma, abuse, potentially lived in a home with violence, or a home where, you know, they saw caregivers abusing alcohol, based on those experiences later in life, they would have more likelihood of developing some type of mental illness. And that was specific to, yes, the social environment, and yes, your, you know, your emotions and your experiences. So the psychological impact of how that would, you know, focus specifically on children where they don't necessarily have the skills to process and work through that and communicate those skills. So later on in life, it does have some pretty significant impacts.
So there's some indicators of good mental health, right? Like people are resilient to stress. I mean, they can, you know, find out ways that they can manage it with empathy, or they have empathy and flexibility. They're optimistic, productive behavior, spirituality. They're in stable relationships. They respect themselves and others. They're confident. They feel like they belong in the community that they live in. They have clear thinking, ability to take care of themselves and others, and they have a sense of well-being and contentment, right? Some indicators of mental illness, you know, it's when people feel like nothing matters. They feel helpless or hopeless, experience severe mood swings, like they're not able to perform daily tasks. They're anxious about everything. They have disturbing thoughts, you know, behaviors that are harmful to themselves or others, memory problems, changes sleep patterns, seeing or hearing things that aren't there, and changes in personality and personal habits, or social withdrawal. So again, mental illness, not mental health. Remember, mental health is something that we all have, right? And how we manage our day to day. But mental illness affects 1 in 5 Canadians. Again, it's important that everybody's educated about mental health or mental illness, not just for themselves, but for other family members and friends and loved ones, right? If you're seeing some of those indicators in somebody that you love, then it will help you identify and maybe be more of a support in those times. And patience and understanding goes a long way to help somebody in recovery, right? Help somebody work through whatever is going on for them in the moment.
So now that Margaret's kind of explained the difference between mental health and mental illness, what do we do when we're trying to support our families, whether that's our children or our teenagers? It's important to note that there are some differences when supporting younger children compared to teenagers. So we're going to get into that a little bit. So specifically when we're looking at supporting the family, what we do want to understand is that people are going to encounter a great deal of stress, confusion, self-blame, and shame when they're figuring out that they're diagnosed with a mental disorder. We call that stigmatized. So typically no one is going to be forthcoming about what they're experiencing in their life. So trying to destigmatize that and make it a safe and comfortable space for someone to be able to share is an incredible first step in moving towards support. So it's really important to know that mental illness can be caused by many different factors, including environment and genetics, um, but also to focus on the fact that the issue of blame really goes both ways. So families and supports also need to recognize that blaming the individual for their condition is definitely unhelpful and can actually create further complications. So really what we want to do is be able to understand how to support and help the individual who's diagnosed with the disorder rather than focusing on the blame and shame. A lot of times those issues or those presentations with behavior are coming from a place of being unable to control that. So it's not necessarily the individual's fault that they're suffering through these things. It's a matter of what they've experienced in their life and not knowing how to manage that, which is now presenting as this behavior that might be impactful to others.
And I find oftentimes when we go and work with families, it's the blame and shame is always there because there's a lack of like understanding, right? Because once a family understands and accepts that this is what's happening, then the blame and shame tend to disappear. So yeah, it's a lot of times our role is to go and help families understand what it's going to look like for them moving forward because of the mental illness.
And realistically, when it comes to that too, it's the family support and it's a collaborative approach. So yes, you might have a professional coming into the home that's addressing the main concern, which might be the individual that is suffering with a mental illness. However, in order for them to implement the skills that they're learning or to move forward within their treatment, families and caregivers also kind of need to wrap around and understand what that support is so that they can encourage their teen or their child to implement those things or to, access a coping strategy that might be beneficial to them. So it becomes this collaborative approach of helping. So when we think about what the effective strategies are going to be, we really want to enforce the point that you are not alone in this. There are many services that are available in order to support you and your families. And loved ones can play a massive part in helping a person recover and work towards their goals. So specifically, emotional support can assist in recovery and well-being, even with everyday practical things. So I think of something like managing a medical appointment or, taking something off someone's plate that might be stressful for them. So if they're thinking like, I have this issue and maybe I can't, get up in the morning and follow my normal routine, maybe having someone, set an alarm and check in on them in the morning and then help them build that structure into their lives and take on some of those little tasks so that it's not something they're constantly worrying about. Family members can also help to observe their loved one's mood, behavior, and self-care to kind of monitor if their mental health might be worsening. And just being there to offer a listening ear and support can also be incredibly helpful. So not providing solutions in the moment and really hearing that information and validating and supporting. So some of the activities we've suggested really involve relationship. And that I think is at the core of every successful intervention is your ability to connect and feel secure and supported. So some of those ideas might be having more family dinners or engaging in a board game night or a trivia night, maybe family arts and crafts, some story time, field trips, movie nights, really anything that gets the family together to feel close and engaged and safe and comfortable. Specifically for young children, we know that when a child has good mental health, they're able to think clearly, they're able to make friends, and they're able to succeed in school. They also develop some self-confidence, they're building esteem, and they practice perseverance. So what this really means is that a child is comfortable to go out and explore their world around them and know that they have a safe place to return back to, that their parents are going to delight in them, that their parents are going to, learn with them and be excited with them when they're sharing these stories. So they feel confident to be independent or to learn independence, set some goals, maybe practice making decisions on their own and building that autonomy. So what we can do in those moments are making sure that we are showing unconditional love, praising their character, sharing how proud we are of them. really spending time together and communicate regularly. So communication can simply be, how was your day at school today? And then, if someone's coming home and saying, well, it wasn't fantastic, explore that a little bit. Well, what do you mean by that? What happened in your day? How can I support you in processing what just happened and then approaching it from a different lens? When we think about teens are already in a place in their life where they've, developed some autonomy. So they're feeling more independent. They, are kind of dealing with things more on their own. So maybe they do have an ability to kind of identify when they're feeling stressed or when their emotions are changing. So whether you're getting along or having challenges, it's important to show that you still love and support them and that you can help them navigate their tough times and that we're always there for them. So some of the things that we need to keep in mind when having that, like how are you doing conversation, is to show that you're always there. So whether that's encouraging them to share their feelings and asking for help, celebrating on setting new goals, routines, or coping skills, listening to their views and resolving conflict in a calm manner, building and maintaining healthy relationships with others, and caring for yourself as a caregiver or a friend. I think that's really the first step in being able to care for someone else, is knowing that you're in the place to be able to provide support. And one of the other really big ones for me that sticks out is listening to their views and resolving conflict. This is how, your teen is building their autonomy. They're building their identity and becoming who they're going to be. So allowing them to have that voice, allowing them to feel confident in what they have to share is so important to making them feel whole and complete.
Mm-hmm. And as a parent, it's sometimes really difficult to do, especially if you find that their interests or their likes you have no investment in when it comes to, especially like as a parent, it's like the YouTube. Like I can't tell how many times my 12-year-old comes to me, like, oh my gosh, look at this TikTok video. And I'm like, I don't really want to, but I do, because that's me, again, encouraging them to continuously share things with me, right? Or, as a parent, like you're busy. Life is going on around you, and you have so many things that you have to navigate in an evening, in a day. And so to put dinner on hold because your child wants to show you what they built in a video game because that's so important to them. Take the 5 minutes. Take that 5 minutes. Be like, okay, I'm going to turn my stove off. I'll come up. Show me what you built, right? That way, it's you participating in their life, right? Even though you don't like it or you don't want to, it's of zero interest to you. They see that you're there for them, and that builds autonomy and self-esteem, and and then and you're able to open up conversations. You know what they're into, right? If parents aren't involving themselves in what their children are doing, then you have no idea what is going on in their social media, or what games they're playing. What if you don't approve of them? Or what if they're not age appropriate, right? If you don't put yourself in their lives when invited, then you won't know, right? So and the how are you doing conversations become that much easier with your child or teen when they feel like you're somebody who's involved in their life, right? So many times I hear, I do intakes for families for our agency where the youth says, like, my parents have no idea, right? They have no idea what I'm doing or what I'm up to, right? And then the parents are like, wait a minute, like, but I do. And they're like, no, you don't. And then, so, I mean, it starts a conversation, right? And then they're able to kind of work through, well, you don't like that I play hockey, or you don't like that right? Am into these video games. Once things are identified and you're open with your children, then you just have a overall better sense of what's happening in their lives, even though they say they don't want you to.
And you're better able to support them in the way that they need because you're in attunement with what their actual needs are. So if your child is coming home upset and they're saying, oh, it's nothing, but it's actually something a little bit more because your child, it's a lot easier to support those conversations and really show your engagement and investment in their own well-being.
I think it's particularly hard with teens too, because like Bree said, they're in an age where, am I an adult? Wait a minute, I'm expected to do these responsibilities like an adult, but I still feel like a kid. I don't know where I am. I don't know, right? So they're in a hard time, like, oh, I don't need you to help me here, or I don't want you to, right? And that's okay. That if a youth says, or a teen says to your child says to you, it's fine, I'm fine, right? Like, how do you respond to that? Well, I know you're not fine because I see that you're not fine, right? And as much as we as parents want to at that time, be a part of their lives, if they don't want you to know something, they won't. But as a parent, you can still support that. You can still say, okay, I respect that you don't want to talk about it now. I'm here for you when you want to. If you want to write me a note or a letter because you don't know how to verbalize what's going on, then do that, right? So again, they might not say, yes, I'll talk to you. Because again, they want to do things on their own because they're an adult, right? Almost an adult.
But knowing that they have that option is a huge step in the right direction of it's still safe to go to my parents or my caregivers if I need to, and they can make that choice.
Yeah.
So next up, we do need to understand when we need to get outside help. So it's great that we can recognize, the signs and maybe some ideas for intervention, but sometimes that support that we're able to provide is just not going to be enough for what your child actually needs. So when we start to notice that, while every child or youth experiences emotional ups and downs, there's some pretty big red flags that indicate we might need to see a healthcare provider or maybe some mental health professionals. So some of those things might be displaying excessive worry or anxiety, appearing less confident in themselves. Maybe they're withdrawing from you or their friends or activities that they used to enjoy. Difficulty in displays significant changes in eating or sleeping habits, expresses hopelessness or seems depressed. Maybe they're engaging in conversations about suicide. They might have some negative behaviors more often, or talk about self-harming behaviors. Sometimes that can look like participating in self-destructive behaviors, or they have issues with impulse control. And being overly irritable, emotional, or easily upset are some pretty big ones.
It's again with mental illness, it's when it's impacting their day to day, right? And I mean, I know lots of times parents struggle because from child to teen, when youth start to go through puberty, they start to like different things, right? So I often have parents say, oh, they're not playing with this friend anymore, or they're not playing soccer anymore, and they're changing. Well, that naturally happens. But it's when they withdraw from like everything, right? Or most like that it becomes an issue, or they're not replacing it with anything else. And I know sometimes a youth will replace, oh, I used to play competitive soccer and now I play Minecraft, right? You may not like the change, but they're still showing an interest in something, right? Because that will, like ebbs and flows, it'll change as they get older. But it's when it's a lot less like themselves. When they're have no motivation to do anything. They're struggling at school and with their peers, right? They're losing friends, but not gaining others, right? So it's kind of like a replacement thing.
So some of the resources that we can share with you today, some of them are specific to our program. So Tandem would be how you would refer your children to our services. So it's a crisis response. It's a 24/7 telephone support with brief follow-up counseling in urgent situations. They have an intake team for Vanier Children's Mental Health from 0 to 12 years old, Humana Community Services, which is us, and we service youth aged 13 to 18 specific to our community programs. So what that might look like for community programs is we offer brief counseling services, which is up to 3 sessions. And we also offer short-term counseling, which is typically up to 4 months. And then there's also Craigwood Children, Youth and Family Services, and that's for individuals aged 12 to 18. We do have Marymount Family Support as well. Anytime, day or night, they do have a 24/7 monitored telephone. Services outside of that would be Reach Out Crisis Line, which is also 24/7. CMHA has a crisis center that's 24/7. They do walk-in support. And they also have addictions crisis. And really what they're looking for is someone who might not require hospital or emergency services. But they do immediate crisis assessment, intervention, stabilization, and then links to outside community resources. And then our last page here, there's a support line, and that's for anyone who is 16 and over. And then Kids Help Phone, which offers professional counseling, crisis support, and then they also have a website where you can get some information and tips or activities and quizzes.
Wonderful. That was a lot of information in a short
It
time. So I
was.
can just, I almost see my own processing face in this moment. Even just in terms of all those resources, how we approach, children and students at different ages and stages, and how that can change, and just really looking for those like changes in behavior and patterns, right? And those sudden shifts. So I really appreciate all the information that you shared, and acknowledging the fact that we all have mental health, and that we can all take care of our mental health for ourselves and with our families as well. So at this point in time, I don't have anything in the Q&A. I'm just popping over to allow the mics for all attendees. So that's now been edited. So if there are any attendees who would like to turn on their microphone to ask a question, sometimes finding the Q&A is a bit tricky, you are welcome to do so now. And we'll just give a few moments. But thank you both. That was a lot of really great information for us.
Thank you.
We also find like parents will say like they had no idea that these services are available. They're free,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So our services are free. They're funded through the Ministry of Children and Families Services.
Mhm.
So it's, a lot of times parents are like, what? I don't have to pay? No.
Is there anything you could speak to? And I know this is a hard topic because we experience it on the daily in our school board. Is there anything that you can kind of speak to in terms though of waiting list or access or kind of triaging? Because we know that that can be tricky and that all communities are experiencing that sort of difficulty. But what is kind of your insight or experience with that for families to understand?
Absolutely. So we use a clinical process for all of our intake. So we use a program, it's called Inner Eye Chime, and essentially we collect information from our intake that would prioritize whether that is high, medium, or low risk. And then based on that prioritization, we do unfortunately have a wait list. Most services right now do. Typically our wait list, it takes probably 5 to 6 months to get service, depending on kind of how fast we're moving through things. Typically, a brief service you'd be almost on right away, maybe a month of service. In those options, if you do access brief first and you're thinking maybe I need a little more service, then we could put back on the wait list and then kind of move forward with getting the longer service of up to 4 months.
Mm-hmm. So again, like with the ages 12 to 18, like it's a hard age.
Mhm.
And we understand that often there could be barriers to accessing services, and like barriers like transportation or consent from parents or caregivers, right? So I know I can only speak to our agency. We're community based, so transportation will not be an issue, right? We will come to you. We will provide services not just at our office, it's out in the community. It could be in the home. It could be in the schools, right? It could be in a park. It could be anywhere that person's comfortable meeting, right? So,
And I think that's huge to know, right?
Mhm.
Acknowledging that it's not, and that people feel safe in different places and may not have access. So being able to come to them wherever that may be is really
Yeah.
wonderful. And I
Mm.
did just notice there's another question that came in through the Q&A. So I want to hold space for that. It says, do you have any suggestions for getting your teen to start a program or start going to a counselor? We have done parent programs, but our daughter refuses to see a counselor.
Mm.
This is something we actually see quite often. So specific to it's really having those conversations and being upfront and honest with what your capacities are as parents and how much you can support. And if you're noticing that there's things that are kind of going outside your realm of what you're able to support as parents, it's having the conversation of what does another service look like. So yes, you might be refusing, and a lot of programs unfortunately are
Voluntary.
yeah.
Right? Like I have lots of referrals that come through for youth ages 12. The parents do the referrals. I go to the home and the kid's like, I don't know who you are and why you're in my home. And, and then they refuse services. And I just say, well, this is what we do. We will support you any way you can, but it's up to you if you want that or not. Right. So it is voluntary, and youth, can refuse.
But the one thing that is important to note in that is that if you did want to make a referral for your child and have someone, schedule an intake and have those conversations where now it's not just, parents, there's a mental health professional coming in to say, these are the services that are available. If you're interested, great. If not, now you know what's out there.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times there is a stigma still around accessing services and what counseling and therapy looks like. Right. So I'll often ask the question, like, have you ever had counseling or therapy before? Does it help to talk about things? Right. Because again, a lot of places provide services in a different way. And we want to make things as easy as possible for a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 17-year-old to talk about really difficult things that are happening in their lives.
It's also really important to note that there's not only just talk therapy, there's so many other versions out there, like art therapy, there's music therapy, there's so many different avenues and options that you can access that's not just, sitting down with a person and talking about your feelings. There's other ways to express that's going to be more suitable to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm going to double check that Q&A there one more time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have another one in here that says, my almost adult teenager was diagnosed at age 13 with OCD. However, this child is now almost 18 and revisiting and exploring a new psychological assessment, but that has been very difficult after you've had an initial one. Is there a benchmark for how often we should be reassessing by age?
No.
Not necessarily a benchmark for reassessing. Typically in school age children, they will do an assessment at like early development. So in elementary, they might reassess again in high school. And then sometimes near the end of high school where they're going to reassess and see kind of what services or, elements will be required for adult services. So there's definitely not a benchmark, but I would say that if you're reassessing right now, that's great because that might change how things are going to look in adulthood, whether that's, access to other funding, whether that's access to adult services, but it'll give you a better picture of how you're going to move forward into like adult services is a lot different than child and youth. So to just have that kind of information and be able to recognize a starting point for the next phase is going to be incredibly beneficial. So if you're already looking at doing a reassessment, you're definitely on the right track.
Amazing. Thank you. Have another quick look here. I don't see anything else at this time, so I'm just going to take a moment here. And if there's any more that pop up in the next few moments, that's obviously okay. But I'm just going to share our closing slide here for Maggie to close us out, which includes those key contact information. There we go. And I recognize it says Cindy, who's our colleague, who's normally with us, but Cindy or myself are the ones to contact for this project. But I'll let Maggie go for it.
Thanks, Caitlin. And thanks again to both Margaret and Brian for being here with us this evening. So again, if anyone has any more questions or require more information or maybe want to have follow up privately with us, the contacts are there for you. And again, that is Cindy Schufelt. She is the mental health person that is attached to this project, but she couldn't be here tonight, so I'm just filling in. But we would also appreciate it if you could complete a feedback survey. So that is the QR code there. That just helps us better serve the community as we move forward. And also we wanted to highlight the website where you can find information about other workshops that have been done. In the feedback form, there's a suggestion box for future topics you might want to see or community partners you might like to hear from. At the top of the site, you'll also find the link to sign up to our mailing list, which would keep you in the loop for upcoming offerings from the series or from our community partners. So we hope this was helpful information. We wish everyone well. And thanks again to our presenters. And we hope to see you back at another presentation.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.